Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order. Welcome to HPANWO TV. Today I'm at the BBC. And here I am, ladies and gentlemen, I'm at the BBC and I'm going to just give you a little look round. This is part of my HPANWO London Truth Tour. Let's see what we can find out. Now, first thing that strikes me as I approach the BBC is this right next to this church here. All Souls at Langham Place. Now, I will get a better view of this from the other side of the road, but it immediately strikes me this is a rotunda, which means it is probably a Knights Templar church. And that's right next door to the BBC, a Knights Templar church. And this here is Broadcasting House. It was built in 1932, it was opened in 1932, took a couple of years to build. And BBC Radio first broadcast here in 1932. It was originally in Savoy Place when the BBC first began. As you can see, it's a kind of Art Deco type building, and that statue there I'll be saying more about in a minute, because it's one of the very sinister things I want to talk to you about today. Now, as you can see, this part of the building is very different to this part of the building. That there is what's known informally as New Broadcasting House, although it is part of Broadcasting House. And it is the new, basically this in 2013 all this was opened here, and they wanted to amalgamate the BBC TV into this area because previously BBC TV had been broadcast in two places. It began at Alexandra Palace, and then in 1960 Television Centre opened, this enormous building which is in Wood Lane, which is in West London. That opened, and all the TV services moved there. That is now shut, and all the BBC TV is now broadcast from in here. And it's absolutely surprising how much you can see of TV. This is a lot more public than the old Television Centre was. But that's known as New Broadcast now, so that's the John Peel wing, but it's all part of the BBC. John Peel, incidentally, was a DJ. He was a radio DJ who was who's been accused of being involved in things like the Jimmy Savile scandal, abuse of children. It seems to be almost par with the course, doesn't it? I'm pausing for a moment because I want to add a little bit more commentary. I'll do this several times in the course of the film because I get the feeling that I didn't actually include enough information while I was there talking. I think I need to add a few more bits and pieces. And the first thing I want to say about the architecture of Broadcasting House, the original old Broadcasting House, is that it reminds me very much of Bruegel's Tower of Babel. This is a painting done a long time ago, which depicts, by the painter Bruegel, of course, which depicts the Tower of Babel from the Bible, a tower that was supposedly built by the King Nimrod because he wanted to reach heaven. Now, what's interesting about this is that this painting has also inspired the architecture of the European Parliament, and well, of course we all know how pro-EU the BBC is, don't we? Broadcasting House is basically an early 20th century Art Deco equivalent of the European Parliament. So, and again, it stretches into the ancient idea of the Illuminati, the lost tribe of Israel, and their will to dominate the earth. The Ephraim, I think they call themselves. I mean, in the belief system of the Illuminati, they think they are the Ephraim. Whether they are or not, I don't know. But they think they are, that's the point. Which is why they put these symbols into their buildings. Another interesting thing I wanted to mention, which I didn't say when I was there, is that within this sort of Portland stone Babylonian stockade is a certain room called Room 101. And that, interestingly, is where George Orwell's office was when he worked for the BBC, and it inspired him to give that name, of course, to the torture chamber in the Ministry of Love. If you read the book 1984, please do go and read that book if you haven't read it already. It's on Project Gutenberg, and in Room 101 the victim experiences a personalised horror, all tailor-made for them. I wonder why it was that George Orwell decided to do that, to actually did he know something about the BBC that we didn't? Anyway, I'm going to go on to describe the BBC in more detail. Originally, when the broadcasting house was built, there was no TV service at all. Then BBC TV started up at Alexandra Palace. Then in 1960 it was moved to the purpose-built television centre at Wood Lane. This is in White City, and then that closed down in 2013. And what you're looking at now is basically all the BBC services moved into one place, into this extension, which I'm going to describe now in more detail. Big Brother is watching you. Yes, he is. Now this here is the plaza, the new part of the BBC, which is some of it is fenced off over there because they do outside broadcasts. But this is supposed to make the BBC more publicly accessible. And you can see here the difference between the old building on the left, that's old broadcasting house, the original 1932 structure, and the new 2013 structure here. And part of it has been built into the top, as you can see. So the broadcasting house has more than doubled in size in 2013. Now, I did a bit of I took a quick look round Plaza, very interesting indeed. And there's that cafe over there, which I want to have a look at in a minute. This is the public cafe where both BBC staff and all the BBC staff go in there, and public, so you can go in there and reach past Hugh, what's his name, Hugh Davis for the packs of sugar. Oh, anyway, that's the actual entrance there, which I'll go and see if we... Now, you can't see much through that door. You can film from the other side. And I want to show you. Wait till you see what's around the other side. Oh, wait till I'll show you. For some reason, people are playing ping pong there, something like table tennis. All that is sealed off by these heavy barricades, but as you can see, those can be lowered so that large vehicles can get in here, the old prison vans and other things they want to cart the children away. And there's something strange about the ground here. This supposedly featureless grey paving has words embossed on it, and we're just going to go and have a look at those now, and I'm going to show you also a very suspicious element of that cafe over there. Now these are the markings on the floor, on the ground, see? Ellis Island, San Quentin, the Stromboli, Cable, there's Robben Island here, Shetland, Ellesmere, these are all islands here, Okinawa. These are these pictures embossed onto the ground. Pitcairn Islands, Capri, Jersey, and then they change, they become Puerto Rico, Hebrides, as islands, and then there's... and it changes at some point. Odessa, Astrakhan, places in Russia, in Ukraine, in Ritsa, Peshawar, places in India. Countries, yeah. Aberfan, that's where there was a terrible disaster. Sierra Leone, St. Petersburg, Tokyo, Texas, Pyongyang. I'm not sure what all these things mean. Kaliningrad, Bucharest. I think that's BBC Radio coming through the ground. And we have here Soweto, Sharpeville. These are South Africa massacres. Peter Snow Returns to the Future. Weekdays 13:45. Oh, that's interesting. Dachau. Phnom Penh. These are Wounded Knee, Medsnap. These are massacres. A bit strange, isn't it? Auschwitz, Wannsee, Bergen-Belsen. There's the radio again. Lockerbie, terrorist atrocities there. There's Jonestown, Waco, Columbine. Well, there's more to those things than met the eye, but you know what I mean. Battles, Waterloo, Hastings, Somme, Ardennes. What a strange thing to happen. Now this here is the cafe. Now just have a look at that. That is a... I want you to remember that image because I'm going to talk about that later. Just remember, is there something wrong with it? Well, this is all very strange because a lot of these Well, I'll come back to the. I won't go into the gill image above the cafe just yet. Okay, I'll talk about that later. That is very important. But so do remember it, as I suggested when I was there. But on the subject of the writing on the ground, some of it is it's all very sinister. I mean, there's all these sort of places of bloodshed and massacres and things like that. And I don't know whose idea it was to include these things. Remember that children visit this location and they do live tours, as you'll see in a minute. Now, there's something else I didn't mention. I don't think I filmed it. And this was that there are strange lines on the ground too. There are lines of they're like metal, like almost like tram rails built into the ground, sort of arcing round and curving along across the plaza area, across the paving. And I think it might be connected with the. If you watch the news titles, the BBC news title, here's a still from the BBC news titles, which have been running since 2013, when the BBC News was actually broadcast from Broadcasting House. You get what it is. You get various clips of reporters reporting around the world, and then there's these coloured lines which sort of fly across the landscape and across the sky, and then they all converge on Broadcasting House. It's almost kind of an illustration of the flow of information from location reporters to the actual headquarters of the BBC, where it all comes in, and then the next shot is the newsreader sitting there going, "Hello, this is the news on the BBC." So I think that's the image that it sort of conveys. Pretentious bastards. Honestly, I'll talk more about this later, but isn't it incredible the arrogance of them, the gimmicky sort of hubris they have in an organisation built for lying and for manipulating the human mind, and they have all these lovely little cosy images of flows of information and stuff like that. The British Broadcasting Corporation, that's the original bronze plaque outside the old Broadcasting House. Now then, I want to show you, this is Great Portland Place here, Portland Road I think, and this is Langham Place. Now there is the church, the rotunda of the Knights Templar Church, Langham Street there. Now this is a statue of two characters from William Shakespeare's The Tempest. It's Prospero and Ariel. Very famous statue by a very famous sculptor. Now I want you to take a good look at that statue. Can you see anything wrong with it? I'll come back to that at the end, but there's something very, very sinister about that statue, which stands at a little. It's a kind of bas relief that stands at the gates of Broadcasting House. There's a lot of strange things here. For instance, there's this weird structure there on top of, I think it looks like a torch, which is, of course, the lighted torch is an Illuminati symbol, and it's on top of the John Peel wing. Isn't that odd? Anyway, we'll take a walk around here and see what we can see. But that's a little glimpse inside there. There's not much in there now, because that's the old part. There's another of these strange bas relief sculptures on the side of Broadcasting House. There's a kind of aerial on top of it. You can't see it from this angle. But there's the famous BBC window, with the BBC logo. That appears to be two angelic-like beings. Again, it's from Shakespeare, I think. Interestingly about that BBC logo, that was originally sort of like, it was a different colour and it was slanted like that. The BBC spent over £250,000 redesigning the logo. You can just imagine the guys they got to do it. They just sort of like just sat around cooling their heels for a couple of months and spending the money, and then someone said, "We've got to deliver the new product." I don't know, just straighten the boxes out and change the colour. £200,000. God, I could have done that myself for nothing. Now, we walk along here, and this is actually Portland Road. This is not the most interesting part of the building, but as you can see here, there's BBC Radio 3 there. BBC Tours. Book a tour at Broadcasting House or another BBC building, or for tickets to BBC shows, visit the BBC. Right. Okay. I know, I've got a feeling that after this film is uploaded I might have to go in disguise.
You know, like I do to the Skeptic events. Now we go along here, let's see what we can find. These are another of these strange sculptures, these bas reliefs. Again, these were actually sculpted by a man called Eric Gill. And he was a member of the Fabian Society, which is, as I've said many times before, is a cultural Marxist think tank. Designed to mess with our heads, which is pretty appropriate, really, when you think about it. But, oh God, this is just a start. I mean, as far as these sculptures go, I'll say more about that at the end. I want to know if you, I want to see if you guys noticed anything before I actually say anything about it. Now you can see very clearly that the old 1932 Art Deco, this is like a Portland stone over steel structure. It gives way to this. This is the new 2013 new broadcasting house area, and you can see this totally different thing here. And oh, it's all fenced off here. I wonder what's going on here. Must be a crashed UFO. As you can see, Big Brother is watching us. Hi there. We're watching you, watching us, watching them. Yeah, as they say on Edge Media. Oh, and that there. Shows and tours. Not today, thank you. But that, as you can see, is where you can go in. I think you've got to book in advance. Anyway, I've got to go along here past this fenced off area where the crashed flying saucer is, or I can't see it at the moment. But again, this is very intimidating. Kind of the architecture looks kind of, I don't know, it's early Maniac, I'd say. Sunshade, you always get these sunshades on the sides of buildings like this. Now, these, I'm not going to show you much of these offices here because they're quite boring. It's when we get to the other side of the building that the fun begins. And this here is Duchess Street. We're now going to walk along the north side of the BBC building. Now, I'm a bit concerned about this cordon, because it's just like seems to be right the way around here. I wonder what they're doing here, but it's a shame because I want to get close to the window. I want to get close to the window to show you more, because there's an awful lot to see here, I'll tell you. Come on Hallam Street now, the west side of the building, and there's no sort of there's no explanation for why this particular area is shut off. I can actually get to the buildings here to the side. Now this is the interesting part, right? I don't know how much you can see, but there's this office, there's this kind of office here. Okay, and now do you recognise this? I'll get close, because the problem is there's double glazed windows, you can't see very much. It's double glazed, but there's like a 3 foot gap. There's what you can't see much, but there's a 3 foot gap. There's this really tough glass here, and there's a 3 foot gap, and there's an inner wall, and then over there, past this office space, you get the newsroom. You can see there's the illuminated screen board. There's the see, do you recognise that? You'll see this on TV. That is the actual BBC newsroom. You can actually see into the BBC newsroom. And what strikes me about this, as you go along here and we'll see some more, is if you are willing to serve the system and the media, which is the primary role for this entire institution here, is the dissemination of mind control and lies. And it shouldn't surprise me, but it always does, how much in the way of resources are spent on this sort of thing. I mean, this costs billions. This must cost billions, this whole institution. So you come round here, you see, I'll show you. You come round here, we've been the plaza again. And you go round there, and you go round there, and we're back where we started. Pretty amazing, isn't it? And that's one, two, three, four. It's enormously tall. And you see you go underneath this new bit here. And they see they've called this off this area. I think they're going to do a broadcast in a minute. But it is impressive. And it surprises me no end about the lengths, the actual depth of the deception. Is so much that they will spend a massive amount of resources designing this, which is intended to shock them. It's definitely intended to shock and awe the natives, isn't it? There's no doubt about it. That is its purpose. Now, I would like to hang around a bit further. There's a copper there. I don't know what he's doing. I'd like to hang around a bit further and see what's going on. But I've got to get to this 9/11 Truth meeting. Oh, it's really quite remarkable to see this, and sinister and disturbing. And I'm going to explain a little bit more why. But please do remember the things I've just shown you.
This is a photo I took actually when I visited the BBC previously. I wrote an article about this because I actually went to visit Broadcasting House the day I went to see Dr. Stephen Greer live. As you know if you've watched my video, UFO Disclosure 2015 Truth or Greer. Now what's strange is that, well, maybe it's not strange, maybe it is just a coincidence, but Greer's lecture was in a place called the Cavendish Conference Centre, which is literally just across the road from Broadcasting House. Now, as I said, security, extraordinarily tight security. Massive security there. The glass is very reflective, so I had trouble filming, I had trouble taking photographs. It's much more difficult to take. You can see a lot more actually with your own eyes there, if you ever go and visit, than you can by taking photographs. But as I explained, it has this double layer of glass. Probably this glass is armoured. Its security there is very tight. Now I have a friend. I have a friend who is a BBC newsreader. Yeah. She broadcasts the news on a regional TV station and I'm not going to tell you her name, obviously, because if I did, you know what, the BBC would kick her straight out. But she's quite interested in the kind of subjects I'm interested in, and I'll be mentioning. I think I mentioned her a couple of times, but I'm not going to give you any details about who she is to protect her employment. What's odd about, she says that the regional BBC TV station where she is a newsreader is very different to Broadcasting House. It's much more open. There's less security obsession. Now, what's strange is she has never been to Broadcasting House. That's odd. You know, you'd think, since she's an employee, albeit for a regional station, they would take her there on an outing. You'd think they would, wouldn't you? Now I've got to apologise. This is a similar apology to the one I gave when I made my Tavistock Institute film. I've got to apologise for being such a wimp. I should have... when that policeman turned up and stood out, you noticed in the film when he turns up, I should have gone up to him and said, "Hey, hello, officer, what are you doing here?" And he had said, "I'm just guarding the premises, sir, because something's going on. There's going to be a live outdoor broadcast in a minute or something. So I'm just checking nothing goes awry." And I just said, "Officer, why don't you go in to that building and arrest everybody there for questioning because of Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris, etc." Because really, when you consider the child abuse scandals there, I mean, I don't buy the BBC, and I think that their explanation for this, and I think Esther Ranson is pathetic. She should be ashamed of herself, the founder of Childline, and her, we sort of heard rumours, but we didn't say anything, you can't really talk about this sort of thing. What crap. We're supposed to believe that Jimmy Savile, who had a career of over 45 years at the BBC, and he was doing his dirty deeds from day one, we're supposed to believe that he got away with it through some extraordinary oversight on the part of the BBC. He abused children in BBC care on BBC premises. He sexually exploited them. And we're supposed to believe that the BBC, their story, they hold their hands up and said, my goodness, we had no idea." Are we supposed to believe that for 45 years that it was just some oversight? No. Jimmy Savile got away with it, could only have got away with what he did through an extraordinary level of institutional collaboration, which must have gone right to the top. And that policeman should have walked into that building and he should have arrested everybody, from the Director General to the studio T-boy, and questioned them. Now we come back to these statues. Have you had a good look at them? Can you see anything that's wrong with them? Well, This first statue, although it's a bas relief actually, it's one I showed you earlier on in the film. It actually is mounted above the doorway to the cafe, the famous BBC cafe where staff and public can mix. And this is actually a scene from William Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. All the statues around the BBC Broadcasting House are statues from Shakespeare. This is a scene from there. The figure in the middle is Puck, one of the characters, and there's these two girls dancing on either side. Now, what's wrong with that image? Well, what I think is wrong with it is that the two girls are lifting up their skirts. That's the considering what has been going on at the BBC, that should alarm people. Two young girls dancing around lifting their skirts up. But it gets worse. Oh, it gets so much worse. Now, the most famous of the statues on Broadcasting House is the statue of Prospero and Ariel from William Shakespeare's The Tempest. Now, Ariel, as you see, Prospero is the large male figure, and Ariel is the small female figure below, who in the play is actually a kind of fairy. Ariel, she's a kind of a nymph or a sprite. And here she's depicted as a naked young girl. Now, this is where there's a difference here. This is not classical art we're looking at here. Classical statues, Roman, Greek, and modern statues inspired by those styles, tend to desexualize human nudes, especially children. You'll find that the men have very small genitalia and the women have none at all in these traditional artistic representations. And of course a lot of Renaissance paintings had that scene as well. This is not the case here. Gill, if you look closely at this picture, look very closely, use zoom if you have to, Gill has given Ariel a visible vulva. That is the last thing that ought to be displayed on any BBC premises. And before, maybe people didn't know, but since Jimmy Savile and Rolf Harris, surely today I am not the only one who is a little bit concerned about this. So I was very distressed, actually, and very disturbed by my trip to the BBC. The BBC secretly, what are they hinting at? They got these carvings of these sexualised young girls on the fronts of their headquarters. I mean, so much money went into building this thing. All phases of its design, billions were spent on this, and they got one of the top sculptors to sculpture these things. Now, as I said, the guy who sculpted it is, as I explained in the film, is Eric Gill, a top sculptor, and he is a member of the Fabian Society, a cultural Marxist think tank. He later, interestingly, resigned from the Fabian Society and converted to Roman Catholicism. He became religious. But now there's some more that have actually come about. Some more information has come my way, and that is an article. This article here was sent to me by somebody who doesn't wish to be named, but they sent me this, and it is it features several things. It features one case, but later on in the article, it actually talks about Eric Gill. There's a biography of Eric Gill that was, who was a colleague of, who's colleague of Gill's, and she wrote a biography saying that that he was a paedophile. He regularly had sex with both his daughters, with his sisters, apparently even with the family dog. And he recounts these encounters in his diary. It's kind of, it is kind of like, it says later on in the article, he abused his maids, his prostitutes, his animals. He was having sex with everything that moved. A very deranged man sexually. Interestingly, Gill carved some religious figures that stand in churches, which the Catholic Church will not remove. So isn't that interesting? Interesting and disturbing. Very, very disturbing.
There's good news. TV licence evasion has now become so rife that the government has been forced to decriminalise it. They didn't do this out of the goodness of their soul. It's just that 10% of all magistrate court cases have been dealing with TV licence evasions. I mean, it's pretty... I mean, you go to just Google TV licence goon turns up or something like that. See how many videos there are of people who just turn these guys have turned up on their doorstep. They say, "You, sir, you haven't paid your TV licence." That's right. I don't want to pay for paedophiles and rapists and mind controllers. And the people who produce the kind of deviance and degeneracy that we see on our TV screens nowadays. It's designed to mess with our heads. It's designed to screw us up. It's designed to give us a false impression on the world. That's what media propaganda has always been for, and today it's more sophisticated than ever. 1,000 channels of tripe. I mean, it's ironic, isn't it? Because I mean, you only have to go back a few years, just to the maybe 1980s, 1970s. 1970s in particular was a good decade for TV, where you had brilliant drama series, science fiction, comedy, of a quality that is way above anything we see on today's screens. And there was also a lot of absence of the kind of probably the kind of rhetoric and the kind of subtle soft kill propaganda you see in today's programs. That was absent from a lot of TV. Not completely absent, unfortunately, but it was absent from a lot of TV. I mean, I don't want to sound old now because I don't consider myself old, but you know, when I was a kid, we had a little. It wasn't black and white. It was colour. I'm not that old, but we had a little TV. We had several TVs in our house. Little boxes with a CRT screen, and you know, the old type. And there was only there was 3 channels originally. It went up to 4. Then Channel 4 came along, then Channel 5, and that was it. You just got a handful of channels. Now, we didn't have a video until I was about 16, but God, the quality was so much better. And it's a real shame, actually, because on the technical side, TV is enormously sophisticated compared to what it used to be within the living memory of even young people. And more money is spent in terms of program production budgets than has ever been spent before on television in history. Yet the quality is plummeted. There's almost nothing worth watching. I mean, I don't watch there's a TV in my flat. I don't watch it. I let the others watch it. I mean, I very rarely do switch it on if there's a sporting event and no one else is in the house, because they've got it on all the time. Or if they're out, sometimes I may switch it on. But basically, I just... And if 99% of it is crap, the 1% worth watching always ends up online, and I can just watch it online. If I lived on my own, I would not have a TV set in the house. As Richard D. Hall says, it's like having an open sewer in your front room. It's true. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this HPANWO London Truth Tour Part 9, the BBC. Hope you enjoyed my little trip around the broadcasting house. Hope you found it, well, if not entertaining, at least enlightening and interesting and educational. If there are any viewers actually who live in other parts of the country or in other countries, perhaps you'd like to let me know what your TV station, your TV service is like, and what if your equivalent of broadcasting house, your television headquarters, what's that like? I'd be interested to know whether the patterns I've seen at the BBC, which of course is a global organisation, but whether that is present on other networks that are based in other countries, because I do believe this is a global situation we're looking at here. So thank you for watching HPANWO TV. Hospital Port as pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order.